So, welcome to Mindset Nebula, where we talk different things about S4HANA. S4HANA is the latest and the greatest ERP that has come out of SAP, evolving rapidly in the recent years into different areas, especially focused, I would say, mostly on the cloud. Today, we have with us several thought leaders on the topic. Debbie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, my name is Debbie Krupitzer. I'm based out of Cupertino, California. I've been with Mindset not very long, just a couple months. Come from SAP, so I speak SAP language, and my role at Mindset is around S4 and BTP, more around the business value. So I'm going to be talking about why you'd want to move to S4 for business KPIs and really around that piece that really sometimes we miss is around what are we bringing to the business with this modernization of S4. So thanks for having me.
Great. And some of the topics that we want to touch on today exactly will have to think about the value. So that's great to have Debbie over here. We have with us Sridhar. Sridhar, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thanks, Parvati. Good morning, everyone. So myself, Sridhar Kara. I'm a senior technical architect at Mindset Consulting. I have been with the firm for, I would say, less than a year, but my primary focus has been on the BTP and S4 related topics, and glad to be here to talk on, the discussion today.
Great. Thank you, Sridhar. You just brought another element of diversity into Nebula. Besides the gender part, because he just said good morning. So I would just like to hand over to Deepika, who's going to say good evening to you. And, go ahead, Deepika.
Yeah, so good evening, everyone. My name is Deepika. I'm a senior developer at Mindset Consulting based in India office. And I've joined Mindset, it's been a year now. And before that, I was in SAP Labs, and I had started my career in 2014. And at that time, around S4HANA was just launched, and we were beginning to develop apps. So yeah, I've been with S4HANA. Think we share a journey together. So I'm as old as in SAP as S4HANA is. So yeah.
You look young.
Yeah, maybe just a perfect segue, Deepika, because I think you have seen from the beginning the development of S4HANA Cloud, because we're in the development team of S4HANA Cloud Professional Services, which was the first foray into S4HANA Cloud after
S4HANA Cloud.
Finance, right?
Yes.
So great to have you over here. And last but not the least, I am Paru Shankar. I have been on Nebula several times, and I haven't come back for a few months now, so it is good to be back as the host today. We will miss a few of the normal hosts, so let's hope that we carry the discussion completely energetically through. I'm very passionate about S4HANA, the reason being that I have actually been in the product management, similar to Deepika, in the S4HANA product management, leading several outbound related projects, programs for S4HANA leadership. And from that perspective, I've seen it from infancy. Many of the things that you see out in S4HANA have gone through my hands in the pilot phases and now are there. Just as an example, situation handling. So these kind of activities really make me passionate, and I am really excited to see how all the customers are going through the journey into the latest machine learning technologies, AI, and the latest hype technologies is how I like to call it. So hopefully we can get into a few of these topics today as we go along the discussion. Great. So who has seen the latest release of S4HANA, what is coming out and where SAP is focusing? Have any of you had a chance to look into them?
Not really. I did check out the link, but it was too lengthy to read out. But yeah, I mean, like the main focus areas has been on the AI business services, predominantly. I mean, like SAP is pushing AI a lot. But I was pretty much intrigued on how, I mean, when you talk about AI, right? Like when you look at ChatGPT and so on, I mean, you need systems to have, large systems to be deployed at first, right? It needs to learn about the outside world to give you a generative response, like, meaningful response. Now, if SAP is trying to get in that flavor into the solutions that it has, where does it put that model, right? Basically, whatever we are seeing right now is, you're trying to make an API call to the ChatGPT. Those are some of the things you're doing. But again, it's trying to get the AI flavor into from the business, from the ERP context point of view. So I'm seeing some blogs and so on, but I still need some more understanding on how those things work and how they make sense. In the sense, is it really AI or is it ML still, or where, I mean, like, you're trying to put AI on S4, or is it the AI on BTP? So there's so many moving parts, like still trying to assimilate many documents. So it's like in my head, I have my own chat GPT. reading, but sometimes I feel, oh my God, I'm lost. So I have to go back. So yeah, sometimes chat GPT does help, looks like. Yeah, it should help us. Right.
Actually, Sridhar, you really interestingly captured what SAP would love to hear, right? The first thing you started off with is, okay, I tried to look into the links and they were
Too
really,
many.
really long and full of features and full of what is upcoming in the next releases and so on. I had the same feeling. Debbie, what do you feel about that?
Yeah, I thought the same. I was sort of like, and I get all the announcements you guys do for BTP, and it feels like I get an email or a LinkedIn or something from SAP about S4 or BTP at least 3 times a day, which is great. But I think to Sridhar's point, where I see the focus seems to be more around the marketing from SAP, right? We have ChatGPT and we want to do more AI. But the reality is that those features and functions are great, but they really aren't selling points to the business yet. And right, so what I am looking for, and it just made me think, Peru, we should have this on our website, which is what are the things that the new S4 release will bring more value to your business? Because at the end of the day, the business is funding the S4 cost of the project. And so when I think of AI, right, and AI includes machine learning and all of those things. I mean, let's be honest, it's all just one big bucket with bigger things, smaller things underneath. Generative AI, nobody's really nowhere close to that. But what they do have, and what I do like, is the concept of the chat GPT like feature around BTP and S4. And so we're all using chat GPT right now. I would use it to write letters and emails to everybody if I could, right? But the beautiful thing about it, and a real life use case that is super valuable, is think about if you're on BTP, you've got integration suite, you've got analytics suite, and you have a chat GPT and you say, hey, for us, for example, in Mindset, hi, can you show me all the RFPs that we bid on last year around machine learning in supply chain for this type of client? And you would get it. That's value. That is, how many times have we spent searching for these things because they're in a Google Drive or wherever? That's the real value. And so what I want organizations to understand is, while that's really cool and shiny, you really need to be thinking of it as a business benefit versus a function feature. How would you use it? How could you use it today? And I think it's great to have it, but be thinking about where you could leverage these features in terms of the value versus the technical coolness of what it does.
Yeah,
I mean, one other thing I would like to add is, like, data is the key, right? Irrespective of what you do, in the sense, like ChatGPT per se, like it has got around 70, I think 70 billion calls going in. The amount of data you feed, the more the model will learn. And
Accuracy. Yeah.
so if you want to try to get that same value in from the business perspective, you have to open up your ERP environment and feed that data into that model. But
You got it.
where is the model going to lie?
Yeah.
So then the questions will come around security, a whole lot of things, a whole lot of buckets from security standpoint. Mainly, things will start opening up. Okay, is my data safe? Is my data secure? I mean,
Right.
if you want to really truly chat the way you chat with ChatGPT, it's the data that is helping it to, converse back.
Absolutely.
I
But
think
from
yeah.
ERP point of view, again, you need to feed the data into it. Where would you feed it in? But till now, the AI perspective which SAP gave is just calling an API to ChatGPT. So I'm not still, it's there. We are just doing a proof of concepts on making an API call, but there is no solution as such where I can have a true conversation with my system.
Right.
So that's something which we have to get in.
In fact, I think this is where I was looking into the 2308 release. There are quite a few aspects that build in a lot of business plus AI related scenarios, right? So if we look into the build process automation aspect, there are a few scenarios like aging analysis of supplier invoices,
Right.
tying it up with the payment terms. So this is something that you can see a bit of aging report that brings about AI and how do you handle the bots into the AI? How do you tie up the transaction of the AI to the data that is there in the ERP? So slowly but surely, some of the technologies that SAP is bringing out has the possibility to be considered as part of the transactions itself. So it looks like slowly but surely things are coming in, but it is slowly. So to
It'll come.
Yeah.
point,
Yeah.
It
yeah,
will come.
yeah.
But I
it's
think you
still-
get it, from SAP's perspective, right? This is exactly what they want us to do. And so SAP already pitches integration with SAP first, SAP business first. And you can, so when you talk about security and all that, there's pre-built security in BTP for you to be able to do this in WorkZone. So you don't really need to have that conversation with your architects if it is SAP. So if you've got Ariba for procurement, if you've got supply chain and all of those are already integrated, you're not even having that conversation around the security for ChatGPT. It's already pre-built. So that's where I start, is that, your SAP applications should be the first thing that you're integrating and embedding into BTP to get the most value from S4. So that way, that conversation comes later, right? And then if you want to integrate third-party data, we all know the third-party integration on BTP. And once we bring that in, we can put security around those pieces to sort of make it, and to your point, it's really valuable, but I think it's incremental. It's like Prue said, it's slowly but surely that we're going to get there. But I think it behooves us as like mindset to show those proof points to our customers right now, is what is the art of the possible of what you could do, and what I don't think they know is what you could do today. Because let's be honest, on BTP, you can search all content. Content's easy on BTP, right? That's a really easy documentation, whatever. I could tell you that's not being used even 5%. And you could start that today. So I think it's a matter of, as technologists and also business people, of how do we make this, for us, technology exciting, because we get very excited by the technology, but also what are some really simplistic use cases for us to go show folks that they can do it today? Because I tell you, our business users aren't geeking out about, third-party integrations on they're not geeking out on that. We are. But how do you then place that into a value statement where they go, wow, I can, and even something as simplistic as, you could show me which food trucks are going to be in front of my building today while also showing my reconciliation reports on my dashboard? Yes, you can.
Yeah. And just to touch on a couple of things that Debbie, you mentioned with the BTP, Sridhar, you mentioned with the data, right? One of the newest things that's coming out in the 2308 is intelligent scenario lifecycle management, where now that supports the data push, which enables training for users to be done in a very easy way based on data that is there in S4. So it's really bringing together from the time training starts, because if you start thinking in terms of cloud, you don't have too much time for training before the software hits your system, or for you to decide how that is which are the areas that are highly impacted, and you have this functionality tying up BTP plus your data to really see users. This is how you model your system before it becomes operational for you. Imagine the user experience that comes out of that. And these are small little aspects that really make a big change in the whole change management aspect or in the adoption of the system. Right?
I'd love to read that, how it's gonna be done. Because, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I also checked out the link. I just saw the automation for finance, which has come in because I'm currently working on a project which requires deep understanding of finance.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, that's very good. And also, it adds value to the business. So, it's really like useful for the end users, for the business people, and for the developers as well. Like now, since I'm working in finance, I was eager to read like what is coming out of the new release in cloud. Though I'm working on the on-premise things now, but I can at least talk to the client that these things are coming and what do you think about it. So that way also it was good. And while we were talking about the chat GPT thing, I remember I was developing one chatbot which used to come in S/4HANA box itself, like on the launchpad. You can talk to you can chat and you can say, okay, can you create a purchase order for me?
Right.
So it does work. Even then it was working very fine. Like we were using CTS data models behind it, and like you can query things also. Can you give me all the invoices in this company code? So those chatting and those results were even possible without chat GPT and SAP
Yeah.
at since that time. So I think yeah, we are moving forward, and they are very slowly and steadily embedding all the AI and ML capabilities as well inside S/4HANA.
Right. Well, and I also think, look, we got to realize that, I'm a Gen Xer. I know you guys are probably younger than me. But really the millennials coming in, well, they want that experience. Even think of an
Yes.
accountant, right? You're coming into an S4 environment. You want to have the experience of how you buy your own products today, or how you balance your checkbook. And the one, we're still getting, I was on a customer call yesterday where customer takes to do a month end close 23 days to close the books in a month. And so they're like, well, we want S4 to go fix that. I'm like, S4 is not going to fix that. That's an issue around, again, people and process. And I think we still tend to forget that S4 on top of bad process is bad S4. And so even when you're talking about the finance modules, right? And I love the finance pieces because that really does show the value right away. But it's also sort of onboarding those citizen developers. Let's think about it. So your case in your project, right? I bet your citizen developers are the accountants. They're doing Visual Basic. They're going in and doing all this stuff, and they don't need to do that anymore, right? I mean, I think the beauty is of showing them the power of S4. And look, there's one thing to do your little detailed minutia work, but also giving that visibility to your bosses. So a month, closing the month in 3 days, which seems a long time to me. I want them to close the books in 2 hours, is really where you're getting that visibility. And Deepika, to your point, that functionality has always been there, right? We know that on-prem for S4, we had the chat bots, but it wasn't utilized. And the reason it wasn't utilized is because we were playing with it as IT professionals versus making it for the business to understand, could you go get the invoices? And that's where there's the balance, right? And so I love it that you're on this finance project. So I have an action item for you, is go figure out like what's going to bring the most value or reduce the time for people to do tasks today. Right? That's the whole beauty of S4, is that it should be optimization of your processes. So I should be able, and what used to take me a day should take 5 minutes, show them. And I think it really is that show. If it's AI or any of these other great modules they're, bringing out is I think it's the show me in a real business context versus giving me a feature function.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that's what I love. I mean, I'm an S4. I'm like you, Haru. I love S4. I think it's got a ton of capability. I think it's a Ferrari, right? I think it's a Ferrari, and that a lot of times people don't need a Ferrari. They need a Ford to
Mhm.
get them to work. But then once they start seeing the features, think of your own experience. I got a new car. I don't know half of what it does, right? Because it's so smart. My husband knows probably because he geeks out on the manual, but I don't know. I'm like, I'll figure it out. But if I need it and then I go read on it, I know it. And then if I see the value it brings, then I know it. And I kind of think of S4 that way and Peru, you and I have had this conversation, right? People complain it's expensive. It's an expensive investment that SAP doesn't give you all the features. They're going to nickel and dime you for the additional features. But I see that as more the progression to get businesses to slow down, to figure out what are the core processes. And then you increment, if you need that feature, you have it available to go buy. And let's be honest, I mean, this is where we come in.
Yeah.
If you're a firm who wants to use embedded generative AI, or a feature of that, then I'm going to show you the ROI of what you're going to get back, which should be your users should take less time to go get something, and we measure it. So there's no question from anybody about what the value is. I say, well, the additional consumption of that license, because we know it gets confusing. The additional consumption of an advanced license for S4 on these modules is going to end up being about $9,000 more a week. I'm making that up, right? But I think what we want to be able to do is say, but let's show the ROI around when you utilize that, and I reduce time for 50 people to do their work. That's worth tons more than $9,000 a week. And I think that's where we need to get. I'm sorry, Prue, go ahead.
Actually, Debbie, you have a very good point, right? So even when Christian Klein in all the Q2 results announcement was talking about business-focused AI, he was also talking about some of these measurements that they did. And just to give you an example, SAP Transportation Management saving 55% of processing cost of the delivery. Yep. This is just one example. When we had cash management coming out at that point of time, also the invoices, the number, I mean, you can imagine the number of invoices company gets. And if you are able to get the system to do most of those invoice processing and only handle those exceptional cases, imagine the amount of time that you have saved and the productivity. Yeah. So doing a baseline of that before you start off with thinking about putting changes to your processes, and then subsequently following it up with KPIs later to assess what is the ROI and that value that you bring in. People underestimate that a lot. The value that you absolutely have to capture, that is actually going into your balance sheet, into your profit and loss statement. And this is exactly what helps you to make further decisions as well. So this is what I think people have to get used to. And if you look into the way SAP invests and the roadmaps that come out, that talks about where are you going to hit your value. So you can already, as you're thinking about adopting processes, look into what are the value. Is that value relevant for you? If not, we go into maybe assessing your processes to see where else can I bring that value, and then decide, is this going to be a clean core standard solution that I use, or is that going to be an additional solution that I need to put in place to differentiate myself and to capture the value I want to bring to them?
Absolutely. And I think it comes even earlier is that when you're looking at S4, and let's be honest, you're on an on-prem environment. So Deepika, you just told me that you were like an on-prem environment for finance. And my question is always, as mindset consultants, because we're asking why are you on-prem S4? And I think this gets to bigger conversations around the public versus private. And I think most people are assuming, most companies just see the price tag of a public green and they're like, whoa, we can't afford it. But I want them to be thinking about what really is the reason why you're not moving to public, because S4 public is where I love S4 for the public cloud piece. And I think what we're still finding is some of that residual holdback on organizations that really don't need the on-prem license, that are still gravitating towards it. And look, we've been doing case studies on cloud and cost for 20 years more. We know that it's proven, but I think it's still getting to us coming back and being like, why are you doing a private? Why aren't you doing public? What portions of that could be hybrid? So it even goes back even further. And then we know, Peru, where it goes is really around middleware choices, right? So you've got MuleSoft. You can show, we all know that you can show a cost savings, put all your SAP apps on S4 BTP, on BTP utilizing S4. You don't need MuleSoft for your SAP. That's a cost. Again, everything for me is, like you said, it hits your P&L, right? So if, and you guys know I've got my 4 areas and it's for S4. Is it going to make me money? And make money is new innovation. Is it going to save me money? Is there an operational efficiency? Am I avoiding a risk? And Sridhar, you came up with a great one, which is security, right? Security around your apps. Or is it a quantitative, qualitative move, which is, are you going to have me have less people doing less work and spending their time on the value? But then it makes me think through, it's going to make people scared, because then they're going to say, robots really are taking over the world, right? Because everything's going to be so automated. I think people get scared by it, right? Where they're like, well, gosh, I'm not going to have a job because 90% of my day is spent putting out fires. And if those fires are put out, what am I going to do? I think that's a much more interesting conversation of the workforce and where it's going. But that's another, I'll write a book on that one. That to me is really interesting.
This is because I asked Debbie to write a book on the values, so she decided.
You told me to write an article, and I'm like, I'm going to write a book now. I've got too many ideas.
Yes.
I just have a thought here, like since you brought up the point of value, right? I mean, there are company organizations that have been on SAP since decades, right?
Right.
Now, throughout these decades, they have built value on the systems. Now, suddenly, if you say, "Hey, move on to the cloud,"
S4.
right?
Yep.
So it's pretty restrictive, right? I will be pretty scared, right? I have millions of dollars going down the drain, and I don't feel as a personal choice, like if I'm buying anything you buy, right? It's like your own system, own maybe whatever you call it. But again, there's a lot of investment that has gone along the years, not only money plus solutions plus software. I mean, so many things that happen.
Ease of use.
Yeah, but I would counter on that. Like, pretend you're a customer, but I would counter you that on that, which is, you buy an old house and you bought a house and 50 years ago, or you buy 100 years old house and 50 years ago they put in the state-of-the-art plumbing. But guess what? Technology has advanced, and if you want to have a modern life in your company, you're going to have to rip out the pipes and put in new piping. And I understand what you're saying. Go ahead. I like this debate. This is good.
But we are giving out choices to the customer, saying that you can be on hybrid landscape as well, right? You can be on-prem, you can be cloud. That's the reason you are building extensions on BTP. That way, slowly, eventually move whatever you need to move on BTP, and still keeping the on-prem solutions.
But I'm going to challenge you here. I like this. I like the debate. We should have given
I know. I love it too as well. So, I mean, I remember at one point, I was assessing one of the client's systems where they had this SD program. I think probably everybody knows it, MV45AFZZ. And that program was heavily customized, torn apart. I mean, like, literally. And when they were trying to move to S4 at that time, they said, "Can I keep it?" That's what the first question. And then, like, I don't want to change anything. I want to keep it.
Okay.
So where does all those go? All the decades worth of
I get it.
I mean, you got my point, right? I mean,
I do, but I'm gonna.
It's challenging to convince someone. I mean,
but
literally.
I'm mindset. So I'm going to sell to you, customers. So guess what mindset can do? What I would say, like in that, right? Of course, you have these homegrown, customized, right? that you have built that put love and energy, sweat and tears. We all get that. We've all been there, right? Where we've built these systems. But the whole point is to say, does it still need to be customized? Again, things are built because there's not availability, or there's not technology, or there's not people. And that what I always do as a mindset consultant is come in and look at your process. The first thing I'm going to look on that tool, right? What you just said, and we do this still every day, is tell me why you built it. And the reason why you built it is you were trying to solve a problem that probably was solved 10 years ago, but you're so used to using this system and you're so invested in it that you don't want to let go of your baby, even though somebody else has built a better, cheaper baby.
Yeah.
Long term, it's a better, cheaper baby.
Yeah.
And what we have to do as true consultants, I get the hybrid environment. I totally understand it. But we're here to challenge, right, about the why. Why do you need this on-prem? And this is what I get all the time, right? Well, because the data loads are such, I got to keep it on-prem because of my servers here. And the reason why is because, whatever, data loads at load times, it's got to be central. I need it on the shop floor, so I can't put it in the cloud. I totally get all that. But what you start challenging is the why around, but what makes you think you need responsiveness of sub 3 milliseconds on the plant floor when really it's 30 seconds? And that you can do in the cloud. You don't need, now I'm not talking about critical machine data that is in production that you need to know if it's breaking and it needs to be on site, right? I'm not challenging that. But I do think we need to challenge the status quo, is that we're not here to just put shiny things on top of bad tools. Yeah. And I think, where we get to is really our due diligence as strategists and as consultants to go to our customers and say, this is not a great process that you built a tool on because you didn't have what you needed at the time. And I know you could tell me, I'd love to delve in that. We should take a business next time, Peru, we're going to take a business customer, right? Which is where you say, like, well, why did you build it this way? It's always because, well, we didn't have the data to do this, and this
And Debbie, you're touching
at the time.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Touching on an interesting point, right? So if you look into the roadmap of SAP, S/4HANA Cloud, and I'm not talking on-premise, I'm talking cloud. There you will see the roadmap is filled with features and functions. And why is that filled with features and functions? It is because what are the on-premise customers missing are those things they are used to. And to your point, right? A lot of times as mindset, when we go into customers, what we realize when we think of all the technologies to be used and so on, the customer will come back and say, just wait a minute. What we want is simplification, because SAP means cater to all the industries, all the information. My person just wants to stand in front of the screen and be able to do what he wants to do. And that is cloudification. Make it simple, and customers are not used to that, making it simple as well. Right. So
to add to that also, I would just like to add one more point here, like since you are talking about heavy customization. So even if some processes are really required for a business, maybe they are very necessary and standard SAP is not offering it, and when you move to S/4HANA on-prem or cloud, SAP does encourage you to have a clean core even while being on ECC. But clean core or moving to S4 does not mean that you will have no customizations. You can still have customizations, and SAP will support you in having those customizations. There are very, very much explained guidelines and details of how you can customize your solution better. So in that case, if you go for those options, it will be like you will have definitely better user experience. You can have better performance, and also your processes can be simplified. Maybe with a little customization, you can have a better process. So all those options can be looked at.
Right, I agree.
They can be
it's the exception, not the stand. And look, The whole point is simplification of the processes. And I really love doing the breakdown of the process onto the
Yeah.
why it's customized. And I can tell you in my experience, and I've been doing ERP transformation for many, many years, 95% of the time, the customization is not needed.
Mhm.
It was built because of a lack of people or a lack of a skill set or a lack of a technology. And I
Or maybe
get, and
understanding the process, maybe lack of
you got it.
understanding the business process.
And it's built on old ways that they've done things. And I think I've given this example before where I had a client where we got down to, it really was around an S4 implementation of a smaller company that had grown very big, very fast. And because the CFO was controlling cost, he wanted to physically sign every check. And we got to the point where we deep dove on this process where we're like, you don't physically have to sign the check. But because he had that built in when they were really small, right, that he had to contain cost, he still made it that he signed every check. And they were in the, 80 million, 90 million, grown from like 5 million. You didn't need that. That was his control.
Yeah.
And that's not a customization. That's fear.
Mhm.
That's a fear. So do you get what and it almost becomes, and I hate to get, it's almost art and science, like a little bit psychological. What you're going to find is that your users are tied to that customization, green screens that they love, but that's not the reality, right? And so what we have to do is organizational change, behavior management, to get them to understand how they do their work should be their experience of what they do at home, shopping, whatever you're doing. And
Email.
what you're finding is it's based in behaviors where they go, I've always done it this way. I don't want to do anything different. And I would warn people, like, if you've got folks that are saying this must be customized, you must keep it, that's the first thing I'm going to go after. Because I think, ooh, there's something really interesting here on why you guys are holding on to this. And that's going to be more around emotion versus money. And what I like to do is show you can be emotional about the customization, but if I show your CFO the money of the savings, I can guarantee you that emotion soon gets cut out.
I think it is also, I mean, regulatory industries aside, right? So,
Of course.
yeah, that will also come. I mean, in all due
Yeah.
respect, as the regulatory organizations also change. But keeping that aside, there are multiple factors that you touched on one aspect, Debbie, in the beginning: workforce, the fear of losing the job. I think that is one of the highest ones, especially in unionized industries, which come into the picture about how
Absolutely.
that change comes over. But it's not something that we need to worry about. One of the aspects of moving to the cloud is also about how you make that simplified process. How do you cater to where do you make the difference? In fact, some courageous decisions taken for the workforce will help the workforce feel better about moving to the new era of where technology helps you. Just as a chat GPT example, right? I was just in a meeting where we were talking about whether we use the chat GPT for a basis of a text that we want to build up and so on. So it really helps you to build that basis foundation, but your brain, your individual contribution is going to be used in a much more impactful way. So you get those purchase orders, mass creation out of the way. Now you can really think about vendor management, because not spending your effort creating those purchase orders one by one. I had a discussion with our finance person about how he was spending time mirroring some of the aspects in one of the small ERPs that we have, that we use in India, and how he has a mirror ERP on Excel sheet, just because there are things that break down in the small ERP we are using. And I was singing in my head, S/4HANA Cloud, S/4HANA Cloud. So there are some of these things that we really have to think. It's not about losing your job. It's not about losing your power over the processes that you have built in place. It is about adding more value with what you're able to think through.
Absolutely.
And that is exactly.
So it's about thinking how you can utilize it best.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
That's the game
finance is a very
changer.
interesting area, Deepika. You are now doing a project on finance that over there is a real fear because if numbers go wrong, that impacts the company, right?
Exactly.
So,
Yes.
and how do you get over that fear? That change management will be very interesting to watch. Sridhar, you are wondering about the changes as well.
No, I mean, changes are good. I mean, I know we're going towards cloudification and everything. Process is one one of the biggest pillars, I would say. I mean, like we have solutions outside third-party solution. Technically, we have third-party solutions that can monitor a system and say, hey, and that can run in a production environment and can say, hey, these are the programs that are less used. Right, that's where you try to, when you're trying to migrate or move towards S4, that is one way of reducing your repository objects.
Yeah.
Now, from process point of view, I don't know personally if there is a tool or a solution.
Right.
If SAP has one, or
They do.
they do, then great. I mean, I just want to hear about that.
Yeah,
So I
let's
would-
we can. Well, I think this is the interesting thing, right? So where there's custom code remediation, right? And I just had this debate internally with one of our developers. There's custom code remediation, which is really, let's be honest, we all know about, you know, the object is the reuse of the object or how many times it's been used really is showing us. But remember, that's from, I'm going to point this out, that's from the technical architecture aspect, right? So the whole thing of, you know, you got object-oriented programming, which is around, you know, polymorphism, inheritance, and encapsulation, right? And so the whole reason objects are created is because of the reuse, right? That's why we no longer have Fortran or any of those, because it was very sequential. We could call to an object, that object could be used throughout. But what we don't have, and this is where it gets interesting, we have BPO tools. SAP just bought one with Signavio. Signavio goes in, and there's others, Celonis is one, that go in and it actually identifies the processes, and it's looking at process pieces, but not at the object level. And what I think would be fascinating, and this is what I want us to do, I should probably not tell this, this is a secret, maybe this is a product offering, right? Is that one of the things you know, an argument I had with the developer, he's like, but Debbie, the custom objects will tell me what objects and will simplify. I said, you're right. It will tell you which objects are being called the most, but it doesn't tell you which object is used the most by the business. Mm-hmm. So when you are, and that's an interesting way to look at it, right? So that object might be called 95 times on the back end, and you're thinking this is a critical object, but on the front end, that object is never even used from the business. Now, what's going to bring the most value around that? It's a balance, right? So I like the idea, and we are actually doing this on a client right now, where we're doing custom code remediation. We're showing the objects, and then I'm going to do an overlay of process. Mm-hmm. So what you're getting is a full picture of, here's the objects that are used from a technical perspective, here's the processes that are impacted by that object, and here's what the customers use, here's what our users use the most. So guess what? That heat map of going and taking the custom code and making that simple, or making that more standard, or for S4, is then the triangle of what we've been, this is the triangle of people, process, technology. It hasn't changed. We have just forgotten that objects are not just for ease of us to code. I mean, let's be honest, it was an efficiency play, right? We all know why we created object-oriented is because it was reuse. Right. We need to do the same thing for the business, and we need to have an overlay of that.
And it's also, you mentioned very interestingly, process mining, right?
You got it.
Process mining, even upfront, before you move into S4, even before the customization, it is also possible for you to see inconsistencies in your organization. So
you got it.
You're not thinking about the transition to S4. You're also seeing why, and I had the situation in 2010 when I couldn't see it, because we had PeopleSoft in different countries for the pharma company where I was heading HRIT, and each country was using PeopleSoft differently. And
right.
And we had no idea that we had no process mining, nothing. Now, doing the same project now with process mining in place while moving to S4 would speed up the whole process of me understanding this country does this like this country does
Right.
this. I have all these inconsistencies. Let us see whether I need to do a greenfield or whether I need to do a kind of migration of processes. These
I
kind
love
of
that.
decisions can absolutely help in speeding up the project much more. So using
Agreed.
process mining as a starting point is another big advantage with S4, with
But
the
think,
remediation and the tools and so on that are available.
I know where I started was a business process consultant, and some of us all started there. Remember our flow diagrams where we did our flow diagrams to do the process?
Mhm.
I mean, what I would have given to have Signavio 20 years ago to go do that for me. And so what you're doing is using automation to then focus on the anomaly,
Yes.
right? So the Signavio from exactly what you said, that process mining is going to focus us on the area. So imagine using Signavio for that and your object, your custom code remediation, and bringing, it's like peanut butter and chocolate, right? Bringing those two together, then to give a roadmap to your users on not only, or to your organization of not only what's the most impactful technically, but what's going to bring the most value is, I mean, and we can do that. We can do that today. I think as we share this with our technologists, what I would share with each of the IT people who are watching this is that it's up to you to bring this to your business users. You're in the detail of it, but you've got to ladder that up. And I think what you'll find is as IT individuals, we have the power to get the funding to go do the fun stuff. And that's if we show our business where the value is for them. It's like my kids, right? My kids convince me to go buy something because they think it's cool, but they better show it's cool for me too, or I'm not paying for it. That's all we want to teach people, right? Hey, IT, you want to do the fun stuff? Go prove it and let the business pay for it. That's what we want.
I mean, imagine now with the maintenance increase, right? So since January, every customer will be now paying extra for the ECC maintenance.
Right.
And now, how are we going to? I'm just thinking of a customer who is going through that maintenance increase. He has a requirement because industry is changing. It's not just technology which is changing, industry is changing because of the technology. So just, I mean, the other day I was just helping one of my aunt's fathers who's 80 plus with his iPad, and it's an iPad mini. It's out of maintenance. Most of the apps that he's used to, they don't work on that iPad.
Right.
Yeah. And he's wondering, what do I need to do to make all this work? The only way is to get a new iPad because those technologies not available anymore. So an ECC customer who's paying a hefty maintenance comes in, wants to make a change to keep up with the technology. He will not even have the possibility to build up that technology in custom, whether he wants to do customization, whether he wants to do and use the developer key and make changes to the system. It's just not available. So what are you to do at that point of time? So it's really time for people to think about the value they're getting with that extra maintenance you're going to pay. I feel.
No, absolutely. And we know that SAP is doing that because they have public cloud numbers. And the best way to get people off of ECC 6 on-prem is to make the cost prohibitive. And let's be honest, like there are certain areas, oil and gas is highly customized. We know that there are industries that are just highly customized. And to your point, Peru, you know, you've got regulatory, you have all of that has to be done on-prem. I totally get that. I do think legislation will change to support, but we're not there yet. But SAP is, you know, one of the things they're going to pitch is like, if you want custom, we'll build custom for you, but it's going to cost a lot of money. So unless you're like, you know, maybe oil companies, because they're worth billions of dollars, are willing to pay for that. And that's okay, right? But I don't think it's where most of our customers are. I don't think it's where we see in sort of mid-market, you know, enterprise that is always looking. I know I am. I'm always looking to save $1 somewhere. That we really need to go where SAP is pushing you, which is ECC maintenance will be gone. They're going to charge you more. I mean, the writing's on the wall. It's either you move or you get left behind with a very high price tag.
Yeah. And
And
same,
the sooner the better.
yeah,
Yes.
I just mentioned like if they realize it, the sooner the better.
yeah.
Absolutely.
But it's also SAP squeezing the customers to realize, and that is also not giving them enough time because they have been hung up on just staying where they are to moving. So it's going to be, what will be our task will be to help the customers realize and put together that business case
Got
with
it.
adoption and going through the processes, right? So see the what
Absolutely.
Sridhar is smiling very interestingly. So I'm just
No, I'm thinking both ways. Like it's a challenging task to move somebody out of what it has been doing for so many years.
Right.
So it has to be the right pitch, right value that they get out of this move. I mean, it should be slowly and eventually because technology is changing many areas. So just have to keep up to it and go on. Yeah.
I think they can start with looking at how they can keep a clean core, because that itself has a lot of insights on looking like how they can move to S4 if they just focus on keeping the core clean.
Right.
Yeah.
And keeping the core clean is nothing but moving to the cloud, right? So
Well, I think
that's
No, no, no.
that is
I
one
think
option. I mean,
I think that's a very
one
simplistic
indirect
way.
option of saying move to the cloud.
So,
But it's
There's
not,
so there is a whole process to it. Like you can start by just looking at the data, existing data only. It's not like you have to move immediately or it's only cloud. You can even move to S4 on-prem
yeah.
and have a clean go.
But I think it's, we talk about customization and you see it, and Sridhar, to your point, it gets very personal and very emotional, right? Which is, hey, this is the way people have done their work. And what I might challenge is that we all have those experiences, right? Where the way we used to do our laundry, or the way we used to grocery shop, or the way we used to get taxis, or the way we used to rent hotel rooms and now we do Airbnb changes. And that's what we're telling our customers is that we get it. But, I'd rather be where I am today, which is looking on my iPhone at Airbnb to go rent a lovely place that's substantially cheaper than a hotel, than going and getting my book of yellow pages and searching through a bunch of pages to go call them to go figure out that a hotel is going to be 15 times more than a house. And so
Right.
that's what we're saying. It isn't a conversation around, S4, SAP pushing you to public cloud. That's not what's going on. It's actually getting you to think about modernization in your own organization, and you've done it at home. Why aren't you doing this at work? And I think that's what we're trying to challenge our customers with, is you're met with this change every day. I don't know how to use TikTok. I have TikTok because my kids have TikTok. I don't get it at all. But do I have it and I look at their little videos? Of course I do, because that's for my kids. It's the same with S4, right? Which is like, I get it. It may not be comfortable at first. You may not understand it at first or why you're even doing it. But sometimes you're doing it because other people see value in it and you do it. You're like, this is kind of cool too.
I think that change management, that mindset change is what we need to bring.
Exactly. I love how you did that, right? It's a different mindset on thinking of S4. It really is more around organizational behavior, organizational change, and change management.
Right.
And we all know as IT professionals what we think that means is training. Oh, well, okay, once we get S4 up and running, we'll do a training session and all you guys will be good. That's not what it is. It really is for like mindset. What we're doing is putting the real value is on the user, is the
Actually,
user.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, it's just the real value is on the user. It's not around the technology. It's around the user, which is what we were historically, why we do what we do, right? Which is to make the experience better, to make it seamless, to make it everything better for at the heart of your company are your employees and your users. So put them first.
And Debbie, SAP allows that with the amount of
Absolutely.
tools that is coming. So if you look into the tools that are being brought out, collaboration, that's around users. Ability
it.
to build process automation around users.
Users.
Patient
Mhm.
handling in all the business transactions around users. Machine learning scenario, decreasing repetitive tasks and
Got it.
users. So it's really about productivity, about how do you adapt all those tools to make things different for the users. So
Right.
or what we need to think about is user experience and then see how to use all these tools to really make a simple user experience. That I think is the beauty of what is coming out now.
Agreed. I think an exercise for us, Peru, is we should take the all the technical terms and turn them into business outcomes. So instead of event mesh, which to a business user means nothing, and we all talk about event meshing all the time, what does that mean to me as a business user? And it means, right, integration of items that bring together to make it easier for you to do your job. Give an example. Nobody, Sridhar, you're no longer able to say event mesh, right? If we said that to people, like you can't, you aren't selling event meshing. What are you selling? You're selling the capability it brings. And I think that's a challenge for all of us, is to start putting these very technical terms into value statements. And that will make all the difference. But you're right, Peru, SAP is paving the way for us. They know this is where this is going, and you'll see a change in their language. You're seeing it today.
Cool. And I think with that, as Amy correctly predicted, we did last out the full hour. So
I'm telling you, that was too much fun. You know, I love this.
I know.
If they would pay me to do this all day, I'd do it. I love this stuff.
I think what is great about Mindset Nebula is that we can express uninhibitedly our opinions, right? So that really brings
That's good. This is my first, so
right.
great.
But I love the fact, and what I like what we did here, is that there's internal debate between us. And that's the thing that we want, is you want discourse, but you want productive discourse. And it's not that I don't agree with you, Sridhar, and it's not that you don't agree. You know, it's not bad, right?
I'm always on the cloud side, but again, I still have my buts.
No. Of
But
course
that's
you do.
good. That's good. That
That's
gives us
good.
a challenge to have this conversation also.
But there
And
are
it's also the
companies are having.
conversation that is there at customers, Debbie. I mean, it's business, it's IT. They have exactly these conversations, and perhaps also yes, exactly.
You got it. Hey guys, I got to run. I got a customer I've got to go talk to. Thank you so much. It was fun. Thanks.
Thank you, everybody. So see you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.